a world where we have everything and it's still not enough, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there's more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old push your way through and claim the deeper, more meaningful life that's calling you.
That's what we invite you to explore with us.
We're your hosts,
Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak. And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Yay! Hi, welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. I'm here with Maren, and we're going to have a really interesting conversation today on a topic called inner mastery. And we want to look at what even does that mean? Inner mastery, it sounds like a great word, doesn't it? But what does inner mastery actually mean? And I'm relating it from a story of, there seems to be so much of a pull to our attention, our energy, we're so easily distracted by what's going on in the outer world, whether it's in social media or whether it's in politics, whether it's in our relationships or finances. And when we're pulled into all these different directions, we can pull up a lot of stuff inside ourselves, a lot of narrative, a lot of dialogue that isn't always so empowering. And it makes us hard to sleep at night. It keeps us up. It eats at us. And we might be even asking the question, I feel helpless and hopeless. What is it mine to do? I don't know what mine is to do. Like, how can I make a difference? Or can I even make a difference? And so the inner mastery is really looking at how do we gain insight and awareness over what's going on inside of us and have some space between it so that we don't get suffocated or buried by it. And, we want to look at some of the thoughts and the emotions and even our responses versus reactions. Because, it's so easy, isn't it, to get completely spun off.
So that is one of the things I'm seeing on the planet right now. And in the world, as we've mentioned, I'm in the US and you're in Canada, and there's so much going on. And I see kind of two reactions. Is one of them is to get completely caught up in all of the stuff that's going on and be angry and be resentful and be, like to have strong opinions about it. For better, for worse, right? Like just having a really strong reaction to it. The other one is to kind of bury our heads and be like, la, 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 I can't hear you, right? I'm just going to do what I do and not think about it as much as I can, even though eggs are like 10 times their price and milk is right. There are so many ways that it's impacting us in our personal lives. And so is there something that's kind of not either of those things? Like, what's the alternative to either being swept away by what's going on in the outer world or just completely ignoring what's going on in the outer world?
Yeah. And I look at that almost like a flat land road. So you think of like, you're either left or right, or, it's this or that sort of thing. And what if it was a triangle instead of a flat bottom of the triangle? What if there was another part where we met? Because sometimes we think about meeting in the middle, and when we meet in the middle, it dishonors maybe ourselves or the other person, and it's compromising, and it's just still icky. I still don't like it. So how do we go to a whole new level of awareness and relationship that transcends where we both are? Like I say, even right now, we're in two different countries, but where we meet is in our hearts. Where we meet is outside of time and space and location and time zones even. We meet at a different place with a common intention. And I think the question for me is that maybe I need to ask myself more, but also what I'm encouraging my clients more is like asking, what kind of world do you want to live in? What is your ideal?
I love that.
Instead of fighting against something, because there's always going to be something to fight against. Always. There's always something that I always say, peace is not the absence of war. Healing is not the absence of disease. And that may sound totally radical for you, but it's like, it's actually inside of us. Healing and peace is inside. Yeah.
Right. So if peace is not the opposite of war, then what would you say is? Like, what is
Yeah,
your,
that's a great
because
question.
like you said that there's that radical, like, okay, so, but that's what we've been taught. So
That's
if it's
right.
not what we've been taught, then what is it? Like, this is where our brain wants an answer to that. Like,
Right. And
well,
this
then,
is where I would say the inner mastery comes from, is finding that internal war that I have inside myself and really finding a harmonizing aspect of it, or a transcendence, meaning that they are all getting honored, but I come to a whole new level. There's that triangle again. I come to a whole new level that is above it, but also includes it. So I'm not negating it. I'm not punishing it. I'm not rejecting it or ignoring it. I'm also not fighting it, but I'm actually lifting it up so that all parts are being met and listened and noticed.
I do, we've used this analogy in the past of, like if you think about from a high rise, like if you're standing in a high rise building and you're standing on the first floor, then all you can see is ground level.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go to the 10th floor, you get, oh, a slightly different perspective. Wow, that tree looks really different from the top rather than
Right.
from, the ground level. And if you go the higher you keep going up in the high rise, you have different perspectives. And I like that with like your triangle analogy, where if we think of the ground floor as that bottom layer of, okay, it's either this or that. Okay, no, let's go to the 10th floor and see if we can find
The
common,
commonality.
right, common ground there. Also, it's not from that flat perspective. You're not on the first floor saying, no, it's this or that. Okay, like you said, we'll mediate and it'll be flatland
Mm-hmm.
mediation. You're actually coming from a higher perspective. And we'll just call it a different perspective because it's not better or worse. It just is different. And now I have more insights. I have a better sense of, oh, that's why I couldn't see it, because to me, it looked this way and now it looks totally different from a different perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, like sometimes we talk about the 360-degree view, but we tend to think about doing that 360-degree view on the bottom floor
Yes.
instead of like a multi-dimensional degree kind of look. So it's like, yes, what if we walked another, in the other person's shoes and saw from their eyes and felt from their experience? That's wonderful empathy. And then also, what happens if we actually go up to another different floor to look at the whole thing from an observation of like, okay, what am I seeing here, instead of like judging it as right or wrong or good or bad, but what am I looking at here that may be helping? And also, what what higher level am I going on to, or what different level upward am I going on that is actually, let me use it as another example. I remember years ago studying physical education at university. There were certain things that you did and did not do that was right and wrong and good and bad. And one of the things, and I laugh at this because this is back in the 80s, you never ever tilted your head back. You never looked up. You're supposed to keep everything, in a sagittal plane, everything like forward and down and side to side. You never did up and down. So what happened? Well, then all of a sudden, in the 90s and in the early 2000s, we started getting cell phones. We started doing computers, and everybody's looking down. Everybody's looking down. And then all of a sudden people start looking up because something's going by, and they've hurt their neck because we haven't used it. So my whole perspective is that what sometimes seems to be right or wrong or good or bad at
In the
one
moment.
time in your life, yeah,
Right.
when we actually go to the future, we look back and we're like, crap, actually we did need to look up and down. And that saying is like, if you want to live into something, start creating the future you want to live in. It's not about pushing away what you don't want. I think that's a great indication of saying, hey, I don't want this, whatever this is. And to be able to flip it to say, well, what do you want instead
Yeah.
then? Because that is part of your future that you can move towards. And then you don't give the very thing that you hate or disregard or whatever, you don't give that energy. You actually allow it to give you energy to move towards an ideal that you want to live into. And
Yeah.
generally, if you share that ideal of where you want to live into, other people will join you. You're not alone.
And there are two things that, as you're talking, come up for me. One of them is from a higher perspective, you can see things like what you were just talking about. If had been able to look from a higher perspective and see a longer, kind of further out into the future, if you will, because from a higher perspective, you see more of the past and more of the future, right?
That's
You get to see further out in what's going on. So you can see like, oh, that's just a crash waiting to happen versus being right. Like when we're in it, we're so in it, we can't see that. And so having some tools, having some practices so that we can get to that next place of, okay, how do I see further? How do I become more aware of the like further out so that I don't get caught in, oh, I hurt my neck because I looked up and I believed that old saying, right? Because that's kind of where we are right now of we're in this place of choice of where do we, and this takes me to the second piece, what you're just talking about of when we're looking out of that upper floor window, we can be looking at the past. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. And what does that then look like? Because that's where we're going. And if we keep taking our past and putting it in front of us, right?
It's the
then
same as
we keep experiencing the same thing.
It's the same as driving a car looking in the rearview mirror. Like that's probably not very safe.
Right.
You know, unless you're backing up, of course, you're going to look in the rearview mirror. But if you are moving forward in your life, it's really advantageous to look out the windshield. You don't want to be driving, hanging on to the steering wheel, looking at the rearview mirror because you're going to miss what's coming towards you.
Right.
And chances are you're going to crash or you're going to hurt somebody or hurt yourself. And I think that's why it's so important to look inside and to look at the very things that you are angry with or afraid of or feeling emotional about, because it does indicate there's a value there. There's something that instead of trying to push it away or make it right or wrong or good or bad, to actually uncover maybe a deeper value that you want to live into. And that takes practice. It also takes a community to kind of help each other see something differently, a new perspective, so that we can then cultivate that energy and move towards an ideal rather than pushing away what we don't want.
So I'm going to bring this back to the inner mastery and why it's important right now and like kind of what it is. And all the things that we've been talking about like getting to that higher perspective, that comes from an inner place, not an outer place. So one of the things that's true is right now we have moved from the age of information. We've moved out of the age of information, and we can experience, we know that, right? Like, so more information is not what is needed right now. Like we can ask ChatGPT, we can ask any of the, like we have information coming out our ears. Like there's so much information. So it's, how do I know what's right for me in all of this information? How do I get signal instead of noise? How do I know what is signal for me?
Yeah, what is true for you?
Yes. Like how do I know in my heart, like if I see the advertising that I'm completely bombarded with, or all of the fake news or real news, I don't know. How do I know? And yes, you can do research and that's important. We've got plenty of information and we can sort through it. And sometimes it's hard to tell. So how do we find that place in us so that, like, think of, an old time radio where you'd had to tune the knob in order to get to the station and you'd get static. And then there's, oh, that's clear. And then it'd be static again. And oh, that's clear. That's what's happening inside of us. There's so much static. So the inner mastery is about getting to that clarity for me, not for anybody else, for me. And that's happening inside of me, not out there in the world. And then the mastery piece is, okay, so how do I do that on an ongoing, regular basis so that I get clearer and clearer and clearer signals? Anyone who's
Yeah.
put time into any kind of anything to become masterful at it, that it's not a one and done.
No, it's a constant looking inside and checking in, because it's like that same old saying of like, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything. Meaning, if you don't know what you stand for, if you haven't looked inside and listened beyond the static to find your truth, your meaning, your values, your inner guidance, then you will be completely at the whim of everything outside of you. You will be over here and over there and up and down and sideways. You will literally waste so much time and energy, which also relates to money. It's currency. Your current is all over the place. There isn't a current. It's kind of like a flat dead zone of water. And when water is not flowing, it becomes actually toxic. And so this is really key. And Chinese medicine would even tell you this too. When things aren't flowing for you, you end up living toxicity. And that toxicity will create dis-ease. Maybe first mentally or emotionally, but then eventually physically in the way of illness.
Yeah.
So it's so important right now.
It is. So for, like we're talking about a lot of like kind of big concepts, and the actual very tangible application of it in our lives. The simplest way I can put it is that the more inner mastery I have, the more flow and joy and ease I have in my life. And gosh, I know for myself that if I could see, going to what you were saying about what's the ideal, what are you moving towards?
Mm-hmm.
That's my ideal. And it's not just for me, it's for the world, because what I want to walk in is a world where people feel they are in flow, where they're coming from a place of joy instead of anger, where there's ease instead of all the tension. I just watch people walk around, including myself, and like all the tension that we hold in our necks and our shoulders. And then it progresses to literal disease.
Our nervous system is so hijacked. It's so hijacked, meaning we are in a constant sense of hypervigilance. So we're in a fight or flight or even freeze or even fawn. Everything is triggering us. Everything is completely playing on our emotions. So much so that we don't even know anymore. We've shut down and we've abdicated, meaning we literally have given up our sense of who we are and why we're here. We've just said, why bother? And we give away our life force, our power. And we're so needing to be able to find a way to tap back into that. So when I look at the inner mastery, it actually gives us protection. When you actually create a way to go inside and clear out and work with that mastery ongoingly, you become more and more protected. So anyone out there who's highly sensitive to what other people think of them, or being able to say no and not feel guilty, or any of those things, if you truly care about the world and yourself, to be able to have some inner mastery is actually protecting you so that you can rise above it. I call it rise above the cockapoo-ness. Rise above it so that you can also tap into that river that is flowing within you. That is so important to keep you nourished and healed. We talk about the absence of, healing is not the absence of disease, meaning in the outer world. Healing is actually transcending within yourself and moving up to a whole new place. So there is peace, there is kindness, there is self-love. There's so much more. And for those of you who already say, well, yeah, I already love myself, I'm pretty good. That's great. Because then this will even help even that much more, because hurt people, but healed people, heal people, and loving people, love people.
So it not only offers us protection, but then it allows us to become the antidote.
100%.
That's just so cool. So we are this subject matter is so important that we are going to, the next few podcasts, we're going to go into 5 aspects of what it means to work with inner mastery. And we're going to bring up, like things like emotional regulation and clarity of purpose. We're going to talk about freedom from external validation. Oh, wouldn't that be nice, right? Resilience without being rigid, and also integrating of our shadow pieces. So we're going to take each of these and talk a little bit about why now, what that means for us, and give you a few tools. So we'd love for you guys to follow along for the next few podcasts. We'll be sending them out. If you're on our email list, you'll get our indications or our notifications that the next podcast has dropped, or you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or, Spotify or wherever you listen to us, and you'll find out when our next podcasts have dropped. You can also join us on our Facebook group, or in our LinkedIn group. Both of those are at Soulful Leaders. And remember that we're also on YouTube. So if you'd like to see our little talking heads while we're talking about all of these things, feel free to join us on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll look forward to going deeper into this inner mastery, what it means, and how you can start on that journey or continue on it for yourself. Thanks so much.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.